Most people believe we live in the most advanced age of human history. We have space-grade materials, scientific testing, and jackets that cost more than an entire medieval wardrobe. And yet, when the cold becomes truly unforgiving, many modern people still freeze, while medieval societies survived winters that would break us today. This video is not about nostalgia. It is about a forgotten intelligence, an understanding of cold so precise that lives depended on it. Medieval people did not dress for comfort, trends, or convenience. They dressed for survival. Every layer, every fold of fabric, every choice of material existed because someone once paid the price for getting it wrong. If you have ever worn a modern winter jacket and still felt cold from the inside, if you have ever wondered why advanced insulation fails once you start moving or sweating, then what you are about to hear will change how you think about warmth forever. Because the truth is uncomfortable. Our ancestors may have had less technology, but in extreme cold, they understood something we have forgotten. And once you see what they knew, you will never look at modern winter clothing the same way again. Medieval clothing was a system, not a single garment. Medieval people never believed that survival could be entrusted to a single piece of clothing. In extreme cold, trusting one garment was considered foolish, even dangerous. Instead, they built complete clothing systems, layer by layer, with intention and discipline. Each piece was chosen not for comfort alone, but for function, balance, and cooperation with the human body. The innermost layer existed for one purpose only: to protect the skin. It absorbed sweat, reduced friction, and created a stable base for everything above it. It was not thick, and it was not meant to impress. Its job was quiet, but essential. Without a reliable inner layer, warmth could not be preserved, no matter how heavy the outer garments were. The next layers focused on warmth, but not in a crude way. These layers trapped air rather than weight. Medieval people understood, even without scientific language, that warmth lives in still air, not in heavy fabric. Multiple moderate layers created more warmth than one thick garment ever could. Air pockets were protected, not crushed, allowing heat to remain close to the body. Above this came layers designed to defend against the environment itself. Wind, rain, snow, and sleet were treated as separate threats. Cloaks, mantles, and outer tunics were chosen for their ability to deflect wind and shed moisture without sealing the body shut. These outer layers protected the system, not the skin directly. The system always came first. What made this approach powerful was redundancy. If one layer became damp, the others continued to function. If wind penetrated the outer garment, inner layers still held warmth. If movement was restricted, layers could be adjusted or removed. Failure was never total. The system absorbed mistakes, fatigue, and changing conditions. Modern jackets promise simplicity. One garment, one solution, one zipper between comfort and danger. But when that single garment fails, when insulation compresses, when moisture builds, when breathability collapses, the entire system collapses with it. There is no backup, no correction, no forgiveness. Medieval clothing systems were forgiving because life demanded forgiveness. Weather changes suddenly. Bodies sweat unexpectedly. Work becomes strenuous without warning. A system anticipates this chaos. A single garment denies it. The medieval approach was not primitive. It was intelligent restraint. It accepted that no material, no design, and no craft could defeat nature alone. Only cooperation between layers, materials, and the body could do that. This is why medieval people survived conditions that modern jackets struggle with today. They did not ask one garment to be perfect. They built systems that could endure imperfection. They knew moisture was more dangerous than cold. Medieval people learned early that cold itself was not the greatest enemy. Moisture was. A dry body could endure freezing temperatures for long periods. A wet body could not survive for long, even in milder cold. This understanding was not theoretical. It came from experience, loss, and survival. Entire winters taught this lesson again and again. When the human body sweats, it releases heat with that moisture. If sweat remains trapped against the skin, it begins to pull warmth away faster than cold air ever could. Medieval people observed this reality long before modern science explained it. That is why their clothing systems were designed first to manage moisture, and only then to preserve warmth. Inner garments were deliberately chosen to move sweat away from the skin instead of sealing it inside. Linen and fine wool were common because they absorbed moisture without clinging heavily to the body. These materials allowed sweat to spread and evaporate slowly, keeping the skin relatively dry. Dry skin meant stable body temperature. Stable temperature meant survival. Medieval people also understood that overheating was just as dangerous as freezing. Working, walking, carrying loads, or chopping wood in thick garments caused sweat. That sweat, once the body stopped moving, became a silent killer. Clothing systems were therefore designed to be adjusted constantly. Layers could be loosened or removed during effort and restored during rest. The goal was never maximum warmth. The goal was controlled dryness. Modern jackets often fail at this exact point. They trap heat aggressively, but forget to release moisture. The body warms, sweat builds, and condensation forms inside the jacket. When movement stops, that trapped moisture cools rapidly, draining heat from the body. What feels warm at first becomes cold from the inside out. Medieval outer layers were rarely airtight. They blocked wind and rain while still allowing slow airflow. This balance prevented moisture from accumulating inside the system. Breathability was not a feature, it was a necessity. A garment that trapped sweat was considered flawed, no matter how thick it was. Even sleeping arrangements reflected this knowledge. Medieval people avoided sleeping in damp clothing. Wet garments were dried by fire or body heat before reuse. Staying dry was treated as a daily discipline, not a luxury. This is why medieval clothing systems outperformed many modern designs in real-world cold. They did not worship insulation alone. They respected the danger of moisture. They knew that cold attacks from the outside, but moisture attacks from within. And they dressed accordingly. Natural fibers worked with the body, not against it. Medieval people did not choose their materials for convenience or trend. They chose them because they worked in the real world, under real strain, across long winters. Natural fibers were not romantic choices. They were survival tools. Wool, linen, leather, and fur each played a precise role in protecting the body, and together they formed a system that responded intelligently to cold, moisture, and movement. Wool was the foundation of cold survival. It did something that most modern materials still struggle to do. It stayed warm even when wet. Wool fibers trap air while still allowing moisture to move through them. When sweat or snow dampened the fabric, the wool continued to insulate instead of collapsing. This meant warmth was preserved during effort, rest, and sudden weather changes. Medieval people trusted wool because it forgave mistakes. Linen was used close to the skin because it dried quickly and reduced irritation. It absorbed sweat without clinging heavily to the body, helping keep the skin stable and calm. Linen prevented chafing, reduced odor, and created a breathable base layer that protected the body during long days of work. It was not warm on its own, but it made warmth possible. Leather served as a natural shield. It blocked wind, resisted abrasion, and shed light moisture without sealing the body completely. Leather garments protected outer layers from damage while maintaining flexibility. Unlike rigid modern shells, leather moved with the body. It aged instead of failing. It adapted to the wearer over time. Fur was used strategically, not extravagantly. Worn outward, it broke wind and trapped warm air. Worn inward, it created a soft, insulating barrier that followed the body's shape. Fur did not rely on thickness alone. It relied on structure. Air held between fibers became a natural thermal wall. Even in deep cold, fur maintained warmth without suffocating the skin. What united all these materials was their relationship with the human body. Natural fibers breathe. They insulate without trapping, protect without sealing, and endure without breaking suddenly. When damaged, they weaken gradually instead of failing catastrophically. Modern synthetic fabrics often behave differently. Many lose insulation when wet. Others trap moisture aggressively. Some restrict airflow so completely that the body becomes damp and cold despite heavy insulation. Medieval people could feel these failures instantly. and rejected materials that worked only under ideal conditions. Natural fibers were not perfect, but they were honest. They revealed their limits slowly, allowing the wearer to adapt. This honesty is why medieval clothing systems survived harsh winters. The materials worked with the body's rhythms instead of trying to override them. In extreme cold, cooperation matters more than innovation. Adjustability was built into every layer. Medieval people understood something modern clothing often ignores. Cold is not constant, and neither is the human body. Temperature changes with movement, effort, wind, and time. Because of this, clothing that cannot be adjusted becomes dangerous. Medieval garments were designed with this reality in mind. Almost every layer could be opened, tightened, loosened, or rearranged as conditions changed. Tunics could be belted tighter or worn loose to control airflow. Cloaks could be wrapped close around the body in biting wind or thrown back when labor raised body heat. Sleeves could be rolled, hoods lowered, collars opened, and layers removed without fully undressing. Warmth was managed continuously, not locked in place. This adjustability allowed medieval people to avoid the greatest mistake in cold environments: overheating. When the body overheats, it sweats. When sweat cools, it steals heat rapidly. Medieval clothing systems allowed people to release excess heat before sweat accumulated. This kept the inner layers dry and the body stable. Modern jackets often trap the wearer in a single thermal state. One zipper controls everything. Ventilation, insulation, and wind protection are combined into one rigid structure. When the body warms, there is often no effective way to release heat without removing the jacket entirely. This leads to sweat buildup, followed by rapid cooling once movement stops. Medieval people never relied on convenience alone. They accepted the need for constant small adjustments. Clothing was part of daily awareness, not something worn and forgotten. Adjusting layers became instinctive, like breathing or walking. Even the design of fastenings reflected this philosophy. Laces, belts, ties, and overlapping fabric allowed fine control. There was no expectation that clothing would remain in the same configuration all day. Conditions changed. So did the system. This flexibility made medieval clothing resilient. It adapted to work, rest, travel, and sleep. A rigid system fails when conditions shift. An adjustable system survives. In extreme cold, survival depends not on maximum insulation, but on intelligent control. Medieval people mastered this control by building adjustability into every layer they wore. They sealed the body where heat actually escapes. Medieval people did not guess where warmth was lost. They felt it. Through long winters and exposed labor, they learned exactly where the cold enters and where heat disappears. They understood that warmth does not escape evenly from the body. It escapes through gaps. And so their clothing focused not just on covering the body, but on sealing it intelligently. The head and neck were treated as critical zones. Hoods, coifs, scarves, and layered head coverings were not decorative. They prevented heat from escaping upward, where warm air naturally rises. The neck, with its exposed blood vessels, was always protected. Leaving it open and cold was understood as reckless. Wrists and ankles received the same attention. Medieval people knew that these narrow points allowed cold air to flow inward and warm blood to flow outward. Sleeves were tapered. Cuffs overlapped gloves. Leggings were layered and secured. Nothing was left loose by accident. Every opening was managed deliberately. The waist was another crucial point. Belts were not only for carrying tools. They sealed layers together, preventing cold air from pumping in and out with movement. This reduced convective heat loss and stabilized the entire clothing system. A loose waist meant constant heat leakage. A sealed waist preserved warmth throughout the body. Modern jackets often focus on insulation thickness while neglecting these escape routes. A thick torso means little if cold air flows freely through the neck, sleeves, and hem. Gaps turn movement into a bellows, pulling warm air out and forcing cold air in with every step. Medieval clothing avoided this mistake by overlapping layers rather than relying on single closures. Fabric crossed fabric. Cloaks overlapped tunics. Hoods sat over collars. There were no straight seams inviting wind inside. The system was built to interrupt airflow continuously. This approach created stability. Heat stayed close to the body. Cold was slowed, redirected, and weakened before it could reach the skin. Medieval people did not chase bulk. They chased continuity. By sealing the body where heat actually escapes, medieval clothing systems achieved warmth with less weight, less stiffness, and greater reliability. It was not magic, it was attention. Weight was distributed, not compressed. Medieval people understood a quiet truth about warmth that modern clothing often violates. Insulation only works when it can breathe. Warmth lives in trapped air, and air disappears when fabric is crushed under its own weight. For this reason, medieval clothing systems were designed to distribute weight across the body rather than compress it into a single heavy layer. Heavy garments were never meant to cling tightly. Cloaks rested on the shoulders, spreading their mass evenly instead of pressing down on the chest or back. Multiple layers shared the load, allowing each one to maintain its shape and its air pockets. Warmth remained alive because it was not flattened. Modern jackets often concentrate weight into one thick garment. That weight presses insulation inward, especially at the shoulders and upper back, exactly where warmth is most needed. As insulation compresses, air escapes. Once the air is gone, the warmth is gone with it. The jacket may feel heavy, but it no longer feels warm. Medieval clothing avoided this by spacing layers intelligently. Inner garments remained light and flexible. Middle layers carried warmth without pressure. Outer layers provided protection without crushing what lay beneath. Each layer supported the next instead of fighting it. This also reduced fatigue. Weight that is distributed feels lighter over time. Clothing that pulls downward or presses inward drains energy and restricts breathing. Medieval people wore their clothing for long days of labor, travel, and rest. If it exhausted them, it would not survive. Another advantage of distributed weight was adaptability. Layers could be added or removed without collapsing the entire system. Warmth could be increased without increasing pressure. Comfort remained consistent even as conditions changed. Modern designs often confuse heaviness with effectiveness. Medieval systems understood that warmth depends on space, not mass. By respecting the structure of insulation, medieval clothing preserved heat longer and more reliably. In extreme cold, pressure is the enemy of warmth. Medieval people dressed in a way that protected air as carefully as they protected skin. Movement was essential to warmth. Medieval people understood that warmth was not something clothing created on its own. Warmth came from the body, and clothing existed to protect and preserve it. For that reason, movement was never treated as a problem to restrict. It was treated as a source of heat that needed to be supported, not suppressed. Blood circulation is what carries warmth through the body. When movement is restricted, circulation slows. When circulation slows, extremities grow cold no matter how thick the clothing is. Medieval garments were designed to move with the body, allowing walking, bending, lifting, and working without resistance. Warm blood continued to flow freely, keeping hands, feet, and core alive with heat. Tunics, leggings, and cloaks followed natural body lines, instead of forcing the body into rigid shapes. Fabrics draped rather than squeezed. Joints were left free. This flexibility allowed muscles to work efficiently and circulation to remain strong. Warmth stayed active instead of becoming trapped and stagnant. Modern cold weather clothing often prioritizes a sleek or tight fit. While this may reduce bulk, it also restricts movement. Tight insulation compresses air pockets and limits blood flow at the shoulders, hips, elbows, and knees. The body may feel protected at rest, but grows cold quickly during prolonged exposure. Medieval people also understood the rhythm between movement and rest. Clothing allowed heat to build during activity and be preserved during stillness. Because garments were adjustable and flexible, the transition between movement and rest did not cause sudden heat loss. Stiff modern materials often crack or resist movement in extreme cold, forcing the wearer to move less. Less movement means less circulation. Less circulation means cold settles deeper into the body. Medieval clothing did the opposite. It encouraged movement because movement meant survival. In extreme environments, warmth is not static. It is generated continuously by the living body. Medieval clothing systems respected this truth by supporting motion rather than fighting it. Warmth followed movement, and movement was protected. Clothing was meant to be repaired, not replaced. Medieval people lived with the expectation that clothing would be damaged. Cold, work, travel, fire, tools, animals, and weather all took their toll. Because of this, garments were designed from the beginning to be repaired. Seams were accessible. Panels were simple. Layers were separate. If an outer garment tore, it could be stitched without disturbing the inner layers. If a lining wore thin, it could be replaced without discarding the entire system. Clothing aged gradually instead of failing suddenly. This meant warmth was preserved over years, not seasons. Repairability also meant adaptability. As bodies changed, garments could be adjusted. As climates shifted, layers could be thickened or thinned. As experience grew, clothing evolved with the wearer. Medieval people did not throw away knowledge embedded in fabric. They refined it. Modern jackets often fail catastrophically. A torn membrane, crushed insulation, or broken zipper can render the entire garment ineffective. Repairs are difficult, expensive, or impossible. Once damaged, the jacket is often discarded, even if most of it still functions. Medieval clothing avoided this fragility by separating functions across layers. No single failure destroyed the system. Warmth, protection, and breathability were spread across garments that could be individually repaired. This created redundancy, longevity, and trust. There was also psychological value in this approach. People understood their clothing. They knew how it worked, how it failed, and how to fix it. A person who can repair their protection is less vulnerable than one who depends on replacement. In harsh cold, durability matters more than novelty. Medieval people dressed with the understanding that survival demanded continuity. Clothing was not disposable. It was a long-term companion, shaped by time, weather, and experience. Knowledge was passed down, not rebranded. Medieval clothing systems did not appear by accident, and they were not reinvented every generation. They were the result of accumulated experience passed carefully from parent to child, from master to apprentice, from village to village. Every stitch carried memory. Every layer reflected lessons learned during winters that punished mistakes without mercy. What worked was remembered. What failed was quietly abandoned. Over time, ineffective designs disappeared, and effective ones became tradition. This was not nostalgia. It was survival intelligence. Clothing evolved slowly because it had already been tested by real cold, real labor, and real loss. Medieval people trusted inherited knowledge because it had been proven under conditions far harsher than comfort. A cloak design existed because it kept people alive. A hood shape survived because it blocked wind. A layering order remained because it prevented freezing. No one needed to be convinced by advertising. Results were visible. Modern clothing culture operates differently. Designs reset with seasons. Materials are renamed. Old mistakes return under new branding. Innovation is often driven by appearance, novelty, or market cycles rather than long-term survival. Knowledge is fragmented instead of accumulated. Medieval systems gained strength through continuity. Each generation added small refinements without discarding what already worked. The system became more reliable with time. Modern systems often restart from zero, repeating errors because lessons are forgotten or ignored. This generational transfer of knowledge created consistency. People could trust their clothing because their ancestors had already tested it. In extreme cold, trust matters. Uncertainty costs energy. Confidence preserves it. Medieval clothing was not old-fashioned. It was time-tested, and time, in extreme environments, is the harshest evaluator of all. Clothing respected the environment, not the mirror. Medieval people did not dress to express identity or status in extreme cold. They dressed to survive the land they lived on. Clothing was shaped by wind patterns, humidity, snowfall, terrain, and daily labor. A mountain climate demanded different garments than a forest or a coastline. There was no universal solution, only local intelligence. Materials were chosen based on availability and performance. Wool thrived in cold, wet regions. Fur appeared where winters were brutal. Leather dominated where wind and abrasion were constant. Clothing mirrored geography. It adapted to reality instead of resisting it. Medieval people understood that nature cannot be ignored or overridden. If a garment failed in local conditions, it disappeared. Survival filtered design choices relentlessly. Aesthetic mattered, but never at the cost of function. Appearance followed effectiveness, not the other way around. Modern jackets often reverse this priority. Many are designed to look capable rather than be capable. They are tested in controlled environments and marketed through imagery rather than lived experience. The result is clothing that performs well in theory but struggles in the wild. Medieval systems also accounted for lifestyle. Farmers, hunters, travelers, and craftsmen dressed differently because their movements, exposure, and risks were different. Clothing was personal in function, not in fashion. By respecting environment over appearance, medieval clothing systems remained honest. They either worked or they failed openly. There was no illusion of safety. In extreme cold, reality decides quickly. Medieval people dressed for that reality, not for reflection. When you step back and look at the full picture, it becomes clear that medieval clothing was never about being primitive or outdated. It was about understanding reality without illusions. These people lived in a world where cold did not forgive mistakes, and comfort was earned through knowledge, not technology. They built systems instead of shortcuts. They respected moisture, movement, and the human body. They chose materials that cooperated with nature instead of fighting it. They adjusted constantly, repaired patiently, and passed down what worked rather than chasing what looked new. Modern jackets often promise protection while isolating us from these truths. They rely on perfection. Medieval systems relied on wisdom. One breaks when conditions change, the other adapts. This is why medieval clothing still teaches us something uncomfortable today. Progress does not always mean improvement. Sometimes it means forgetting what once kept people alive. If we want to truly understand warmth, resilience, and survival, we don't need more layers of technology. We need to recover the principles that were already tested by centuries of cold, woven quietly into cloth by people who could not afford to be wrong.